Okay, so I'm not really sure how to go about this, but I've wanted to start this channel for a little while now. And I do have something a little bit longer form in the works. I.e., it's more of just like it's more of like a review sort of thing. But in the meantime, I just kind of wanted to do something and put something on here, right? So I'm a big fan of Final Fantasy. Maybe not the biggest because I'm looking at this main series list and there's a couple here I haven't played. Mostly the direct sequels and stuff. But no, I figured I would just kind of go through the list here and just rank them depending on kind of what I think. Obviously this isn't like a definitive list. I'm not like, oh hey, I agree with my opinion or you're wrong. But I've just kind of had an interesting run through the series over the years, and I kind of think that where we start in the series tends to kind of affect the way we perceive the quality of the games, or well, our personal understanding of the quality rather. Um, so you can see I added an extra tier here. Haven't played. I mean, when I get to a game that I haven't played or haven't finished, because there's a few here that I dabbled in a little bit but I haven't finished. I might give some thoughts on it or whatever. But yeah. Okay, so I guess we'll start with Final Fantasy One here. Um, you do have to give it some respect for starting it all. Um, but it's very archaic by today's standards. Uh, I mean, I think it holds up, especially the PSP version that has all the bonus content added over the course of many iterations of this game. God, we all know this fucking game's been released like what 20 times probably. um, but yeah, no, I don't think I don't think it does anything super particularly well, but it doesn't do anything super bad either. But what I will say is that there is a lot of potential for replay value. Um, just for the fact that you can change up your classes. You can pick whatever four classes you want. You can go pretty standard. Warrior, thief, black mage, white mage, or if you feel like you just hate yourself, you can go with four white mages for some reason. So I'm gonna put it in a B tier. I think maybe I'm giving it a little bit of leeway. I think maybe I'm giving it a little bit of leeway just for the fact that it's the first one. Like if this had been the third one or something, um, probably would be like a C or something. And I guess I'll iterate here real quick. I don't think of the ones I've played, which are at this point all of the main ones, not counting the sequels, and I haven't played 11. I will say that right away. Um, I don't think there are any bad Final Fantasy games. So if I put something in D, it's not necessarily. I don't necessarily think it's bad. It's just not as good as the others. Now, going on to Final Fantasy Two. Uh, oh yeah, I noticed when I looked up this template, the games were not in order, so I went ahead and rearranged them, put them in order. Kind of drives me nuts that they weren't in order, so I figured I would just do that real quick. But anyway, moving on to Final Fantasy Two. Um, I think we all know that this is going to be a D tier. Uh, I think it kind of gets a worse rep than it maybe deserves. I mean, it has some interesting ideas, and props to them for not just doing the same thing over again. And I do like that there is more of there's more of an emphasis on story this time around than the first one, or at least as much story as you can get out of as much story as you can get out of an 8-bit NES game. The only thing, in my opinion, that's really holding it back, though, is just the fact that the way they did stat growth and character growth, I think it was pretty novel for the time, and it's an approach that you would see games down the line, especially Western RPGs like Oblivion or Skyrim or Fallout. Um, you would you would see those games down the line, adopt those, use certain skills to gain proficiency with them kind of methodology there. Um, but yeah, I don't feel like it was super well implemented in 2. And, it doesn't help that 2 is... fuck it, I'm gonna put 2 it. No, it's D. It's D. We know it's D. Um, the game is very breakable. I mean, I just bumbled through that whole game not knowing what I was doing, and then I got to I don't know, I don't remember how I managed to do it, but I stumbled upon like two blood swords. I think that's what they are in that game. I stumbled upon two blood swords, put them both on Furion, and the Emperor never stood a chance. Like, I didn't even have to heal. Yeah, it's very breakable. It's I think I would like to see them. I would like to see them kind of revisit that idea maybe down the line. That would be kind of cool. Maybe in a spin-off or something though, because I just don't see. I just don't see two's well, not the combat necessarily, but I don't see two's character progression really fitting into mainline. But that being said, with the announcement of Final Fantasy 16 and pretty much everything from 12 onwards, who knows what quote-unquote fits into a main Final Fantasy. I mean, kind of feels like it feels like these days, anything can wind up in a mainline Final Fantasy, but I've yet to find something that I don't enjoy, so, I trust Square. So I guess that brings us to 3. Now, 3 introduced the job system, which is, well, I mean, I guess it had its roots in 1. But it introduced the idea of being able to change vocations for all of your party members and stuff. And that was a really novel idea, but on the other hand, there were some areas where 3 felt more like a puzzle game than a JRPG. I don't have that much expertise with 3. I've only played it the one time. But there were certain areas or bosses where it felt like the only way to proceed was to correctly guess the jobs that they wanted. Like I remember early on in the game, there's a boss. I think it's Garda. Garda seemed nigh on impossible unless you had a party of 4 dragoons. And then even that makes it really hard to want to experiment with the classes because if I recall, there's a pretty hefty cooldown that you have to account for when you're changing classes. I understand that they did that to deter people from changing classes to cheese certain things, or maybe that was their mentality. I'm not sure, but yeah, I don't know. 3 felt pretty unfair in a lot of places, but a lot of that could just be me not being super good at the game. But, just for the novel ideas it introduced, and frankly, the understated impact it did have on the rest of the series, I got to give it to C. Okay, so we're on to 4, and 4 was not the first one I beat, but 4 was the first game I played in the series. And I think in 4, there is more of a focus on story than any other game thus far in the series up to this point, 1 through 3. That being said, it lost a lot of the freedom that the first 3 games had. Characters were very restricted, you didn't really get to pick your party. There was always an excuse to have exactly 5 members in the team or whatever. Well, I mean, later in the game. But characters would come and go, which I thought was kind of cool, which was kind of a cool element in 2. But when you have characters constantly coming and going, I find it hard to get attached to them. I do. So yeah. I would call it A tier. I would. The only thing I would say that's really holding it back is, like I said, just that lack of real ability to customize. Yeah, no, it's good. It was good for the time, and it still holds up today. Much like the first 2 games, it holds up the best in my opinion if you play the PSP version. It's my understanding that 3 does have a PSP version, but it's not available in North America, which is where I'm at. So I guess moving on to After Years. I actually have not played After Years. I dabbled in it a little bit. I think I maybe put something to the tune of maybe 4 or 5 hours into it. It just felt really repetitive, and it felt like we were really retreading a lot of the same ground that felt like we were really retreading the same ground that that 4 had done. It kind of felt like we were just remixing dungeons and stuff. So yeah, haven't played it, so I can't weigh in on it fully. Now, I think that 5 is gonna be an A tier because I think it took everything that 3 did and did it better. I think it took the job system of 3 and did it better. I think it took the kind of loose story of 3 and did it better. But the only thing that I think holds it back from S tier is the story is kind of It's all right. It's serviceable. It's not nonsensical. It's not bad. It's not poorly written. Well, I mean, I guess that kind of depends on what version of the game you're playing. For me, it was the GBA version. Apparently, from what I've heard, the PS1 version is pretty not great. But yeah, I'd say it's a solid A tier. It's just a couple of story things more than a couple story things. Kind of a weak story keeps it from being S tier, in my opinion. So moving on to number 6. I know this is not going to surprise anybody, but I'm putting it in S. I guess now you kind of know where I stand in the whole 6 versus 7 debate. So while I would have preferred, so I think 6 is kind of the perfect marriage of 5's freedom and 4's character focus. I really like the ensemble cast, and I usually don't like games that have huge parties because I don't like to sit there and micromanage entire parties and shit. But and I'm not gonna say that every character in 6 was a clear winner. I mean, there was a goddamn Yeti who didn't fucking do anything. But no. I feel like if you had to meet in the middle between 4 and 5, you would get 6. Gone was the job system, but you got espers and stuff, and that I feel like that kind of provided enough customization for me to feel like every playthrough could be a little bit different. And I think this is also where we started to see just weapons in general kind of start to get interesting. I remember really liking Setzer. I liked Setzer because of the way his weapons worked. I remember I came upon one of his side quests where I found the fixed dice. Oh my god, it was all over. I fucking love those things. So and I guess while I don't like micromanaging giant ensemble casts, so I guess I probably should never play Suikoden 2. Kidding, I'm gonna play Suikoden eventually. When I can find a copy for a reasonable price. That's probably not gonna happen though. I'm a college kid. I ain't got money for that. But yeah, no. I think 6. Yeah, I think 6 is an S tier. I do. I know it's not exactly a controversial opinion there, but yeah. So moving on to 7. I don't think it can be underestimated. Or understated, rather. I don't think it can be understated what 7 did for this franchise. I know that there is a small sect of the community that seems to think that 7 was kind of the harbinger for everything that was quote-unquote wrong with the series from then on. Maybe too much of a focus on cinematics and shit like that. I don't think 7 is a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. Now, that being said, I don't think anything that's going to be an S is perfect. So, I don't think it's a perfect game by any stretch of the imagination. The English translation is kind of bungled. I think we all kind of know that. I also don't really have the nostalgia for 7 that a lot of people do. In fact, the first time I played 7 all the way through was last year. I mean, I've always had an understanding of how 7 goes down. I think I watched a Let's Play of it when I was 10 or something. So I've always understood the broad strokes of 7. I always know what happens in 7. I always know how the mechanics of 7 work. So, when I would be in when I would participate in conversations about 7, I would kind of know what I was talking about. But it was kind of cool last year to finally play the Legend. Um, that being said, I I don't think it's as good as 6. Let's see here. Hold on. Can I? Oh, I can. Okay, I guess we'll say that anything that's to the left here is better. And yeah, okay. So I think 4 is better than 5. Let's see here. I would say 7 is probably the best in A tier, but I don't think it quite hits S tier. I never, and this might have something to do with the translation. But yeah, I just never really came to empathize with the characters as much in 7 as I did with those in 6. I do hear that there's mods out there and stuff that kind of make the translation a little bit better. So maybe that'll be worth visiting down the line. Now here we are at 8. 8 gets a very bad rap. 8 gets a very bad rap. A lot of people don't like 8. If I had an F tier on this tier maker, I have a feeling that many people would put it in that F tier. But having played 8 a few years ago, I don't really think it deserves quite as bad a rap as it gets. That being said, 8 is just like one big minigame that obscures the true game of Final Fantasy 8. Triple Triad. Or is it Tetramaster in 8? It's Triple Triad. Dude, oh my god, you can spend hours. You can spend hours in Triple Triad. But you know what? I've always liked that, though. I've always liked that about 8. That it kind of felt like 2 separate games, in a sense. Because, I mean, the mechanics of Triple Triad and, like, changing the rules and getting cards is totally removed from the rest of the game itself. But the cards that you get from Triple Triad can feed back into the main game. And dude, if you play Triple Triad and you do it right, you know what you're doing. You can get so grossly overpowered. I've never had the patience to sit there and farm Triple Triad to the point where I'm nuking shit on disc 1. I've never had the patience to farm it to the point where I could fucking kill Ultimecia on disc 1. Or will be ready to kill Ultimecia on disc 1, rather. I don't think there's any way to fight Ultimecia on disc 1. So I'm gonna... I think 8's a B tier. I really do. A lot of people don't like the junction system, but, I think it's better than 1. I do. That might be kind of a hot take, but whatever. Yeah, I think 8's better than 1. It has a lot of customization, and that's something I really value. The junction system can be a little bit hard to swallow at first. It's a lot, and the tutorials are very front-loaded. It's a lot that they give you at once, and it can be a little bit difficult to make sense of it. But I think once you understand that, you have a game with just a very, very, very rich amount of customization. Not to mention, I think at this point, I didn't dig too much into the side quests of 7, but the amount of side quests and extra things to do in 8 just felt so robust. And it felt like everything that you would do in your side quests would feed back into the mechanics of your party. And everything you could be doing would serve the purpose of improving your party. Yeah, I mean, mostly because if I recall, most of the side quest rewards were things like summons, or what are they called in that game? Guardian forces. And as you junction Guardian forces to your party members, and that allows them access to different passives, stat increases, stuff like that. Yeah, so in 8, I love the cohesion of 8. I love the cohesion of 8. I love how everything you do in 8 feeds back into the mechanics of your party and makes your party stronger. I've always enjoyed that about 8. Now, that being said, I think 9's an S tier. I'm going to say that right away. Is it better than 6? I don't know. But 9 is, I think 9 lost some of the customization that 8 and fuck even 7 with the materia system had. I do like the idea of learning passives and abilities from gear. I thought that was a cool idea, but I think 9 is just I think 9 is probably one of the most heartfelt entries in the series. Uh, much like 7, I've had experience with 9 for years before I actually played it. And that experience I had with 9, I watched H.C. Bailey's playthrough of 9 years and years and years ago. And then when I finally played it, knowing what happened didn't dull the experience for me at all. I think it says something really special about a game that can still have that effect even when you know everything that happens. I don't know. Like I said, this isn't like a totally objective list, so I'm having a really hard time explaining why I love 9 so much. I've played it numerous times. I've never gotten the jump rope trophy though. Fuck that. I'm never doing it. My ex-roommate and I, we actually had at one time we had a bet. He said if I could get that trophy, he would give me his entire SNES collection. And this guy's got a pretty decent SNES collection. He's got some rare ones in there. But I could just never do it. So moving on to 10. I think 10's an A tier. I do. I'm gonna put that right here. Now, where in A tier do I think it is? Well, I kind of think much like 6, it's a good marriage between I think it's a good marriage between the customization philosophy of 3 and the character-driven philosophy of 4. I think it does both of those things. I think it meets in the middle. I think it does both of those things better than either of those games do apart. But I don't think it's better. I don't think like 6. I don't think that's enough to push it into S tier. 10 had some very emotional moments. But there was a lot of the casts I didn't really find myself empathizing with. Like Lulu, Waka. I didn't really find them particularly likable. Titus was kind of a little snot for most of the game. I don't know if you call him Titus, whatever. As long as we all agree that the plural of Titus is tie-dye, but whatever. Which, I kind of said the same thing about 6, but 10 has a much smaller cast than 6. So there's a few characters in 6 that I don't quite feel for. That's fine. There's 16 characters or some bullshit in 6. 10's only got, to my knowledge, I think it's 6 or 7. Yeah, so, let's just say 6 real quick. I'm sure I'm wrong, but, if there's 2 characters I don't particularly like, that's, that's 33% of the cast I don't really care about. Let's just call it 15 characters in 6, and there's 3 characters I'm not super into. That's only 20% of the cast that I'm not super into. But the gameplay at 10, I really like the sphere grid. And I'm kind of sad that they never revisit something like that. Unless we're talking about 10-2, which I'm gonna go ahead and put that right there. But yeah, no, I think 10 is a solid A tier. I do. So yeah, I guess moving on to 11. I dabbled in. Well, let me say something about 10-2. If 10-2 is anything like 10, I have no experience with 10-2. I told you guys that I messed around with After Years a little bit. 10-2, I have not touched it a single time. I had a friend in high school, who just completely dismissed 10-2. He hated it. He said it was the second worst thing on the planet. We'll get to the quote unquote worst thing on the planet in a minute here. But I've been hearing over the years a bit of a shift in the general fan opinion on 10-2. I've seen people over the years coming out of the woodwork saying, "Oh, it's not as bad as people say it is." I've noticed that's kind of the Final Fantasy cycle. A game will be hated for a little while, and then a couple entries later, everybody's just kind of okay with it. I feel like I kind of saw that happen with 12. obviously I'm pretty young, so I haven't been like conscious in the gaming scene for most of these, but yeah. So moving on to 11, I played 11 for all of 5 minutes, and this was coming off of WoW. I had a WoW bender for about a year. Got really into WoW for like a year, and I wanted to try something else. And 11 just felt really archaic. I know there's a lot of love for 11, and I haven't played 11 that much, so I want to sit here and shit talk 11. But with 14, I just don't feel like I have much desire to go back and check 11 out. That being said, though, I would like to go through it one day just to kind of see what the story was like. So 12, that buddy in high school I mentioned. This is according to him the worst thing to ever have existed. This is the worst thing to ever have existed. It's Satan itself. It should be renamed Final Fantasy 666. So I should make an extra tier and slam in an F, right? No. I actually played it myself a couple years ago. Now, granted, this was the Zodiac Age version, which, to my knowledge, did combat some of the complaints he had about the original. But no, I played 12 a few years ago, and I found that I really liked it. Yeah, I know a lot of people like to slam it for basically being Star Wars, but I prepared to take my nerd card away here, but I've only seen like one of the Star Wars movies, so yeah, I didn't really get that comparison. I thought the Gambit system was really interesting. Hence my username here. I'm a programmer, so the idea of programming my party members to do stuff, that was really cool to me. I really like that. So, I mean, this is probably going to be, like, my most far-removed opinion here. But I'm throwing S. I'm throwing 12 in S. I'm digging it. It just really scratched that kind of programmer itch for me. Just being at the Gambit system, it's so great. I love it. The story isn't the strongest in the series, which is why it's still behind 6 and 9, but it just really scratched an itch that I feel like only people like me have, Revenant Wings, I have not played that. I know nothing about it. I know it's on the DS. And then aside from that, I know nothing about it. 13 was the first game in the series that I completed. Yeah, so I guess I have a bit more love for it than maybe some other people do. But after playing everything else in the series nearly, I have to say that it doesn't really hold up that well. There's no exploration. The progression felt like a diet sphere grid. It felt like a diet sphere grid, with the occasional branching path. But other than that, I feel like there wasn't really much there. Just kind of felt like if you fought every enemy and made sure you were leveling up your diet sphere grid. It's the Crystarian, that's what it is. Felt like you were pretty much guaranteed to win, assuming that you adjusted your strategy with your paradigms a little bit. But yeah, I don't know, man. I don't know. Like, on the one hand, I have a lot of nostalgia for this game. It was the first, I grew up with mostly a SNES and a GameCube. And the 360 is what kind of brought me into the HD era. And even then, I got a 360 after it'd been out for like 3 years. Which, being the big JRPG nerd I am, in retrospect, I really do wish I would have gone with a PS3. I did end up getting a PS3 down the line, but Final Fantasy 13 was kind of one of the only HD JRPG offerings for me, available to me at the time. So I do have a lot of love for it, but unfortunately that nostalgia doesn't really stop me from seeing a lot of the problems it has. So I'm gonna throw that in C tier. I think it's better than 3. I do. Now I would say it's probably I would say it's closer in quality to 1 than to 3. But I don't know. I just don't think it's enough to push it in B tier. Now 13.2, I never finished 13.2, but based upon what I've played so far, Now I don't know why I stopped playing it. I started playing it on release day. I got the big special edition with the 4-disc soundtrack. Oh my god, that's probably my favorite special edition I've ever bought. Um, Now based on what I've played, I could very easily see it being A tier. Well, okay, I could very easily see it being B tier, and then I could see it pushing through enough to be A tier. I feel like based on what I'd played, it improved a lot of the things that I personally didn't care for about 13. But, like I said, I haven't finished it, so I can't really make that call. So I'm going to go ahead and slam that and haven't played. Lightning Returns, obviously, I haven't played it. I've heard bad things, but it also looks really interesting to me. I am not caught up with 14. I'm not caught up with 14. I've played through the MSQ of launch, and I played some of Heaven's Ward, but I feel like I have to throw. I don't know. I feel like I'm so confident in the quality of this game that I'm gonna go ahead and put it in S tier. It's gonna be in the lowest spot of S tier, but I don't know. There's just something I really liked about. I think we all remember the disaster that was the original version of 14. I think we all remember that. But I think there's something really cool about the way Square Enix was willing to admit that they had made a poor product and they wanted to try again. Not just try and sell this piece of crap, but, well, I mean, I guess they did for a little while, but, eventually, they owned up to it. They admitted they made a pretty poor product here. And not only did they admit that and try to just do better, they worked it into the story. And that was super cool. And I love that. And my only regret is that I wasn't there for that final moment where they shut down all the servers. I've watched that video on YouTube, like, oh my god, countless times. It's so great. But I think the reason why 14 deserves S tier is because while 15 and 13 and 12 are off, experimenting with different things, I think 14 celebrates a lot of things that a lot of people love about this series. I see countless callbacks and stuff. It just feels like a celebration of everything that this series has been so far. Now, moving on to 15, I have a lot of love for 15 on a personal level, but it's a D tier for me. It's better than 2. I said it's better than 2. Come on, get over there. I have a lot of love for 15, but it is such an incomplete game. And they tried to fix this with, cobbling together DLCs to fill in the holes and stuff. Luckily, I didn't get around to it until a lot of those holes had already been filled in. I mean, I can only imagine what the experience was like for people who went through it, week 1 or whatever. But yeah, just, it feels very incomplete. I think it had the potential. I really do think it had the potential to be a masterpiece, but, after years and years in development, it just ended up being squandered, and that is frankly heartbreaking to me. Remember there was a lot of hype for 15, and I don't think 15 could have ever lived up to the hype. But I think 15 was more than capable of achieving, I think 15 was more than capable of being a complete game. And I think had the development of 15 not been such a clusterfuck, I think 15 could have easily achieved A or maybe even S, but as it stands now, it feels so cobbled together and incomplete. I'm kind of hoping that maybe one day they can take another stab at it and we can get more of a seamless experience. Kind of like a final mix, I guess. I mean, I guess that's kind of what the Royal Edition was, but the Royal Edition was just, I don't know. So yeah, I guess that's kind of where the games stand, in my opinion. Like I said, I don't think there's any bad games in the series. I really don't. Like, even 2, which, as you can see here, I think is the worst in the series. I don't think 2's even that bad. I don't think 2's even really bad. And obviously, I've got, obviously my reasoning for all of these isn't super solid. Like 14, I'd probably say that I had the weakest argument for putting 14 in S tier, but I don't know. Yeah, so that's kind of where I stand with that. This is my first video, so I don't think anybody's really gonna see it. But if somebody does stumble across it, let me know what you think. All right.